With you here for quite a while as we just jump right in with our education special and talk about everything that's been happening across the state today.
This is the day that they have been waiting for throughout the last several months. We've been talking about the teacher walkout here. If the lawmakers had not reached their decision in time that what the teachers wanted to have happen, and it didn't. So those teachers, some 20,000 plus, gathering on the Capitol steps today to protest, to voice their concerns, and to try to meet with lawmakers.
Yeah, OHP releasing those numbers, 20,000 folks, and included in that number are 1,000 state workers as well that also demonstrated as well today.
Well, and one of the things, we have been watching a lot of social media, and I know you folks have as well. There have been amazing signs, very creative and clever. There have been also pictures taken, and I will tell you, I was a little surprised to see how many lawmakers were not at the Capitol and how even the governor and lieutenant governor were missing. Now, we did catch up with Mary Fallon later this afternoon at the mansion, and we have that exclusive interview on our website if you haven't had a chance to watch that or not. But she feels and believes that she's willing to talk with the teachers, but what the legislature has done is what she wants them to do.
Yeah, we watched this too as you've watched it at home play out in real time today. Some lawmakers opening their doors and having a conversation with teachers and parents that have shown up today, and others really had their doors shut and wanted nothing to do with it today.
And I think I asked Lori earlier in the day about the mood. When you have, there's this electricity, there's this energy. The last time this happened was back in 1990, and there weren't near as many teachers that converged on the Capitol. So there's this real feeling of now is the time to make this change. But I got the vibe from Lori and from what some of the people were saying that there was a lot of frustration, that people say, okay, you've got your increase in your salary, be happy and go back to the classroom. Right. Whereas these teachers are saying, we have textbooks that are older than the students we're teaching. We have issues with furniture that's mismatched, where we're trying to get 35, 40 kids in a classroom that only is suitable for 19. So those are all those elements that, how is that going to be funded? And talking with Dr. Deborah Gist earlier in last week, and she says, I will go to the Capitol, I will say thank you, but I'll say, what is the next step? We need to look at years 2, 3, and beyond. How is that money going to be coming in?
And let's kind of explain what we're doing here. We have
that's a great idea.
We have a special report that airs starting at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock called Educate Oklahoma. And throughout the special, we have a couple of reports that air in the special as well. We're really going to dive into education across the state of Oklahoma, what led up to this, why we're where we are, and where we go from here. And we'd like for you to jump in on the conversation too. I suppose it's important for us to go and share.
Yeah, I just got loaded on here myself so that we can kind of see some of the comments. Lillian says they will be back tomorrow. Okay, now there are a number of schools that have already canceled classes for tomorrow, and actually some have gone ahead and postponed throughout the end of the week.
Yeah, and it's really hard to keep up with. I mean, really, you want to download our free News on 6 app. All the school closings are listed there. I printed out a list here.
And it was 3 pages long?
Yeah, we're already 3 pages long, and there's a lot of school districts that are on this as well. This list is growing, and some of them are off for tomorrow. Some have said we're off indefinitely, many the rest of the week. Already for tomorrow, we have heard of at least 40 districts across Green Country that are closed. That's just tomorrow, and that list again continues to grow.
As we mentioned, some of those are continuing to close all the way through Friday. Now, I know, for example, today Manford Public Schools, they had a professional day, development day. So kids were already scheduled to be out of school. However, they have already said that they will cancel classes through Friday. I believe Owasso was also one that was mentioned.
Yeah, we've got Owasso, Pawhuska, Sand Springs, Sapulpa, Skiatook, Tulsa Public Schools. The list just goes on here. Eufaula, Glenpool, Henrietta, Jinx. These are all for tomorrow. Ulagog, Newada, Pryor, Sand Springs, Tahlequah, Union. Yeah, all closed tomorrow.
Now, the way today unfolded in terms of the speakers, the gathering, I've not exactly heard what Tulsa Public is going to do in terms of those teachers have been bused home, how many will get to stay down there. I know that they were using social media as a way to find other teachers where they could spend the night and hang out. So I know that that is happening. However, tomorrow they should have the 9 a.m. picketing beginning on the Capitol steps, and then around 10:30 they're going to continue continue to have speakers like they did today. The NEA president was there this morning, as well as the Oklahoma City Teachers Union president. He was there. They even had a 10th grade student from Moore High School. She had lived in Texas. Her name was Hope Davis, 15 years old, just articulate, well-spoken, moved here several years back, and says she didn't realize how good she had it in Texas because of class size of 19. When she's, she even held up one of her textbooks that was taped together to hold together. She says, this is not the way you treat your future. And I think those that information came across so loud and clear and was incredibly well received by those who were there.
I think too, as we talked with superintendents and we spoke with principals and parents over the past several weeks, teachers are so humble. No teacher that I talked with, my stepsister's a teacher, she teaches home ec back in Michigan.
Yeah.
No teacher gets into teaching because they're going to get rich.
Yeah.
Any teacher that I talked with this past couple weeks says, this isn't really about me. It's not really about my salary. Yes, a pay raise would be great. This is really about education funding. And we see that a lot too on the comments that are even coming in right now on our News on 6 Facebook page, that it's really about education funding. It's about lowering those class sizes. It's about getting new textbooks. It's about getting equipment and chairs that work, that aren't broken. It's about not cutting programming. I was really surprised with, some districts that they started with personnel because of course that's the first thing to go, right? But then we start talking about that personnel means art class, maybe music class, maybe drama, all those extracurriculars that some schools are just stripped right now just to core curriculum, which is really, really depressing if you think about it.
Well, I'm just scanning through here real quickly. We say good evening. I started to say good morning. It's a habit. I'm on the PM side, right?
It's great to see you
It's great to see you. Thank you for letting me invade your space here. I love Facebook. I love the opportunity, what we can do with this element. As what we're going to do is we're hoping you'll turn on Channel 6, that you'll watch our education special that's going to start here in just a few minutes. And then during the commercial breaks, go ahead and have your phone, your iPad, your laptop there with you. And then you can comment on what you've just seen and give us some of your insight. We'll try to read some of those comments, and if you have questions, we'll try to participate in that as well.
An open dialogue that wouldn't have been possible some 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's amazing, really, what all of this has been able to do. Facebook Live, Facebook, Twitter, just the platform that we have now, to be able to hear you in real time for responses when we have a special presentation like this.
Well, and I was telling you earlier, we had Dave Davis literally on the school bus this morning with Dr. Deborah Gist, TPS superintendent, and they were on the road. They were passing Bristow, and we were talking live. I mean, that would have never happened in years past. So it's, and I think that's what's making a difference. You can now have this immediate response. People can check social media. They can do Facebook Live right from the steps of the Capitol for their own, community. And as they said today, they're going to go back. They're going to continue this message in their own town, in their own community. And I thought it was interesting, the president of the union in Oklahoma City made the statement, and in November, we'll be able to make our statement at the ballot box. Not a threat, just a promise.
Right.
Okay, so Letitia is on there, says, yes, vote all these people out who have been there all these years. Okay, that is one opinion.
Yeah, Jamie post how sad it is to, but Jamie's post just went away, how sad it is to have teach of our children that the needs don't matter to Oklahoma lawmakers. And that is a tough conversation really to have with children. And in fact, one superintendent I talked to recently told me, she was with the Jinx Public School System, she told me, I hope that the students have not noticed the impact that this has been having in the classroom. Obviously, they know about that conversation now, but she said up to this point, I really hope that they just didn't know how bad things were behind the scenes.
Well, and right now, and this is my understanding, that there are snow days that we have built in. My son's a senior at Union High School, so we have prom next week. We have graduation coming up May the 9th. Right now, he's over in Edmond at a golf tournament. So all of those things are so in flux because you're like, now, are we doing this? Are we not doing that? Just last week I was with Walt Whitman. Those kiddos there, they take home bags of food they did on Friday. So they didn't know where they would be this week given the walkout. So communities, faith-based organizations are really stepping up to come alongside these people to show we support education. We need to make sure that this gets fixed now so that we're not doing the same thing next year and the year after.
Right, and that's the big message, isn't it? The time is now, and it doesn't seem to matter. No district too big, no district too small, and they're proving even the small ones are very, very mighty and their voices are being heard.
Well, I think that was the thing, my takeaway today, watching from here, the people, coming from all districts, all across the state. I think of my son, and I think of his school district. My husband's a teacher at Union. So those are kind of insights that I have. However, my my little bitty life compared to, I mean, there's thousands, 700,000 students in the state, all these teachers, all these support personnel, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, the secretaries. I mean, they are the backbone of the school, according to Dr. Deborah Gist, and they need that attention as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to just even see in higher education the impact. I recently interviewed a student who is wanting to become a school teacher, and they're wondering if their time in the classroom is going to be impacted. They have to have real time in the classroom in order to be able to get their degree.
Yeah.
And so you talk about graduation at the high school level,
Yes.
you talk about graduation too for those that are earning their undergrad or their master's to continue education to be a teacher in the classroom.
My mom taught for 40 years in Tulsa Public Schools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What did she teach?
She taught 5th grade.
Okay.
Same school, 3 different classrooms. Thank goodness we got her to move around just to change her pace. But I still have people come up to me today and say, your mom impacted my life in such a powerful way. She had a special after when they come back from recess, they would read A Wrinkle in Time was her big book, which I think is ironic this year. That's the big movie. Yeah. But kids still say, you know, what your mom did. And you can think about your growing up. That one teacher, that second.
What about your first grade teacher? Do you remember their name?
Miss Davis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Rogenbach. What about your second grade teacher?
Well, let's go back to kindergarten. Miss Scout.
Miss Byer. You always remember your teacher. That's how much of an impact they have on you, that all these years later, you can still recall just like that their name.
I know this comes as a big shock to you. I was not a big math person. Okay. I'm still counting on my fingers. But my my algebra teacher, and he was also my softball coach, Coach Dennis Calkins. And to this day, I mean, what he taught on the field and in the classroom impacted my life. And so, yeah, we say, I love those signs that said, if you can read this sign, thank a teacher, because that's our jobs, really what we had to go through growing up, and then through college, and then being here, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, again, 20,000 people at the state capitol today. Tomorrow it continues. The rally beginning at 9 a.m. with speakers starting at 10:30 again, so a repeat of what happened today playing out again tomorrow as more and more districts are saying, yeah, we're closed on Tuesday to continue these demonstrations at the state capitol to really send a message home to lawmakers.
It'll be interesting to see now tomorrow, because there were quite a few lawmakers that weren't there today simply because of the Easter holiday, and so tomorrow heading back to the Capitol and being there to talk with teachers, to give them that voice. I mean, I think that in my opinion, that's the least you can do, is at least hear their complaints, their concerns. And I did hear repeatedly, we don't want this to be confrontational, we don't want it to be adversarial, because we have to work together to get this solved.
Right. And it is interesting too, you mentioned the holiday break and some lawmakers that weren't there today, just to see how many folks were there today.
Right.
20,000 people is a lot of people after a holiday break, and on a day where the weather's not so great, it's cold, it's chilly, it's gloomy, and so many people still stood up today to say it's not just a one-day event for them. They're going to be back out there tomorrow as well.
All right, so what we're going to do, as I mentioned, and Brian said this so perfectly, our special is going to start here in less than 2 minutes. So we invite you to turn on Channel 6 right now so that you can watch along, as we'll watch along. We both have stories that we'll be presenting tonight, as well as many of the other reporters here with the News on 6. And it's really a collective look, an overview of what is happening in our state of education and where we are today based on what is happening even as of this morning.
Yeah, and it's literally changing by the hour, by the minute. Even when you came in today, I said, gosh, did you take a nap?
Yeah.
And you said yes, and I was like,
what did I miss?
Here's the latest. You almost feel guilty at this point sleeping because you know you're going to miss something.
Right,
yeah.
And it is vital. It's critical to our state. I was with some folks today commenting about business and, companies locating here. If you don't have a solid education system, who wants to move here and put down roots? So we do have a lot of work ahead of us. And I know that bill that got passed it was historic and it was amazing. However, lawmakers and teachers together are going to have to continue this walk, and we'll see what happens over the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, again, we're going to watch this presentation with you. We want you to jump on so we can have some open dialogue here as it plays out this evening.
Yeah, we do thank you for being with us, and of course you can always make sure you have the app, you have the newson6.com, and we will be right back in our next commercial break, and we'll be sharing more from your comments here on Facebook Live.
There's one reason and one reason only a teacher will walk out, and it's for their kids.
Kids come first. The time is now. This walkout stands for a lot more than teacher pay. This is a walkout for the valuing of education.
This is going to be a fight.
Fund education for you and me.
If we aren't in the classrooms, they're going to have to take us seriously.
I live to get up and go to school for their hugs and their smiles and their aha moments. But I can't do this anymore.
It's disgraceful, Oklahoma. You can do better. You can.
Educate Oklahoma. Presented by Classic Chevrolet of Owasso.
A historic tax bill passed. Teachers are finally getting a raise.
But educators say it's not enough to fix an education system in crisis. Good evening, I'm Craig Day.
And I'm Terry Hood. Over the next hour, we're taking an in-depth look at the fight of Oklahoma educators for better pay and funding for their schools.
And how did we get to this breaking point where schools across the state shut down today? Plus the sacrifices districts are making to stay afloat.
We have covered this historic walkout from every angle today, and we will have more live team coverage coming up.
And throughout the hour, News on 6's Leanne Taylor and Brian Dorman will be on Facebook Live sharing your thoughts and your concerns.
Thousands of teachers, students, and families, of course, marched on the Capitol today demanding better funding for Oklahoma schools.
News on 6's Lori Fulbright begins our coverage. Lori?
Well, we today followed around a group of parents and teachers as they went door to door trying to talk to lawmakers. The group that we were with chose to speak with lawmakers and with the same respect that they would speak with their students or how they would want parents to speak with them. But we encountered other groups that were more forceful in their approach.
So could you elaborate on that for us and kind of tell us what you're thinking and things that you have in place?
Yeah, so first off, where we are, we have enough revenue right now to pass everything, pay for everything we've passed without cutting core services.
This group, called Oklahoma Parents and Educators for Public Education, says their goal was to first thank lawmakers for what they've done so far, but remind them it's only a first step.
We are here just to, to let them know that we expect that the funding is continuing in a long-term solution and not a short-term band-aid intending to placate us so we just go away.
Other lawmakers refused to meet with the group at all. This senator did and was confronted with some angry questions.
Can you promise us this $50 million deficit will not affect mental health or will not be taken from correctional officers and will not be taken from needy organizations already?
I have 3 boys that have been in a boys' home and they're making progress because they're not getting the funding they need. I don't know if I'll get to see them again because they're being scattered everywhere. One of them's already going to Tulsa.
Parents were also here to support teachers. They say lawmakers need to hear the personal stories teachers encounter so they can properly understand and fix the problems.
Those legislators that have been continuously voting no, we want to know, what are your solutions? What are you bringing to the table to help progress public education?
Legislators said nothing new would happen in the next day or two because, of course, passing legislation is a slow process, but some did say they are doing their best to be creative. And some state employees also went on strike today. In about 10 minutes, we're going to tell you what it is that they want from lawmakers. OEA, though, is saying that this shutdown will continue until lawmakers commit to funding our children's future. News on 6's Emery Bryan tells us what lawmakers and the governor have to say about where we go from here. Emery?
Well, Lori, while the bill passed last week missed the mark set by educators for school funding, state leaders want some credit for what did pass. They emphasize this is a big change from the cuts of years past.
It took a lot of courage on the legislators' part. It wasn't easy.
The legislature approved a teacher pay raise averaging $6,100 a year.
When you think about bringing us up to the second in the region with the highest teacher pay, and to come from 7th to 2nd in this short a period of time is quite remarkable. But also we've had a 19% increase in funding for education.
But school districts across the state say teacher pay is just one part of the puzzle. They say they desperately need more funding for students as well. But lawmakers say the pie to take money from is only so big.
We're trying to also balance the needs of every other agency, and and trying to make sure that we shore up any inefficiencies that we have.
Legislators can still tap into money from capital gains and wind taxes. They can also allow school districts to use property taxes for teacher pay and supplies.
This would not be an increase in property tax. It would just be a more flexible use of that already existing base of property tax.
But few lawmakers expect another major infusion of cash for education on top of the $400 million approved last week.
I think this year it's going to be difficult, just in the sense that we passed a historic amount of money for education, the biggest teacher raise in the history of the state of Oklahoma.
I understand there's more that people would like to have done, and hopefully we can keep talking about that, keep advocating that, and keep encouraging people to understand that education is just critical.
Now, the legislature is still in that special session, so as they did last week, they can still quickly create and pass legislation that would meet the teachers' demands. Reporting live on the scene on the story at the state capitol, Emery Bryan, News on 6.
Our kids are hurting. Help us. For goodness sake, help us.
The message teachers are sending to lawmakers is very clear.
They tell News on 6's Leanne Taylor the time has come for change. Leanne?
Absolutely. We followed 2 teachers to show the impact they're making in the classroom and why they demand change.
We're not walking out on them. We're walking out for them. None of us want to be away from our kids for one day.
Sheila Thompson tries to make a difference every day she walks in the doors at Lee Elementary School in Oklahoma City.
I don't think I could ever be as fulfilled in another profession as I am in teaching. My favorite part is the relationships that I have with the kids. I probably easily hug, over 100 kids a day, every day.
It's that relationship that motivates the 14-year veteran teacher to fight for better funding for schools.
When you have a relationship with them, they want to try to do their best for you because they know that you care about them.
Which is why she is walking out and is leading the charge for change.
I don't feel like legislators really understand how serious we are.
Thompson and her fellow teachers have taken an active role outside the classroom to get that message to lawmakers.
We are hurting. Our kids are hurting. Help us.
They rallied over spring break for a pay raise, more funding for students, and a cap on class sizes.
What do you know based on this picture? We had 28 last year, I'm at 33 this year. What's the number going to be next year?
Jessica Tilley teaches 5th grade, and after only 3 years into her career, is already disillusioned.
It's difficult to know that you're undervalued. It's hard to come to work every day when people think you're a babysitter.
But like other teachers, her passion for teaching and her students keep her focused on what's best for them.
We need more technology in our schools, which costs more money, which we don't have. So we're losing that side of it. So we're not developing our kids for career readiness.
And with their demands finally being heard after so long, educators are hopeful for the future.
I think that if we aren't in the classrooms, they're going to have to take us seriously.
Now, about 2/3 of the schools that were out today will be closed again tomorrow. The OEA and many teachers we've talked to say that walkout will continue until more education funding is approved. Leanne Taylor, News on 6.
State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister says the tax bill is a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done. Our Amanda Taylor caught up with her at the Capitol today.
The legislature passed some things last week. How do you see that affecting our schools?
Well, it's a significant effect when we talk about our teacher shortage. It's very important that we have competitive pay so that our teachers will not walk out of Oklahoma classrooms and into other states. So a very important landmark bill that has helped address that. But that's not why teachers are here today. Our teachers are here fighting for the students in their classrooms. In fact, I have seen a sign that said, "This is not a walk out, but a walk for kids."
That's interesting. Let's talk about what has been passed, and that is some of the teacher pay raise that has been asked. Last year we had hundreds of teacher openings in Oklahoma schools. Do you think that this is going to help that?
I do, but it's going to take many years to reverse the historic and severe teacher shortage that Oklahoma has endured. Our children deserve better. The most important person in a schoolhouse in lifting academic outcomes is a teacher, and our children have not had those teachers, and the teachers that we do have are not having the resources that they need to be able to give the instructional material materials to students, and we have to work to change that. And it's because of what is best for kids that we are here today, and that many are advocating for more of a priority on restoring education funding.
Because there are a lot of teachers out here today that say there's not enough. They're having to duct tape their classroom books, their textbooks. Do you see us being able to get more education funding?
I think there's real momentum with the bill that was passed and signed into law last week. It's a momentous step forward. Of course, one bill, and in fact in 1 year, is not going to reverse the effects of 10 or 11 years of eroding the funds for public education.
Do you support the teachers who are out here if they want to stay an extended amount of time?
You know, I do support our teachers. The reason that they are here as well is because their local school boards have passed a resolution or modified the calendar to ensure that no instructional time is lost and that they can be here without having a negative impact for students. We know that teachers are here wanting to do the right things for their students, and I don't think that's going to change.
State Superintendent of Schools Joy Hoffmeister, thank you for joining us.
Well, a handful of schools did not participate in the statewide teacher walkout today, including Cushing Public Schools. Assistant Middle School Principal Don Amon says they fully support the teacher walkout, but it was a local decision to continue school as usual this week. He says he feels encouraged by the recent vote to raise teacher salaries, but adds it's only the first step in what will be a larger movement to fully fund public education.
I think you're going to see a change. I think they realize that, hey, this is important. It's important to our future.
Cushing Public Schools did send delegates to the Capitol today to advocate for public education.
Teachers aren't the only Oklahomans trying to get a message to lawmakers at the state capitol.
I think state legislators need to know how important state services are in their district, and this is going to be one way to do that.
Up next, some state employees stand up for teachers by walking out of work.
Plus, for the second time in his career, an Oklahoma teacher walks out of class to fight for better pay.
And later, only on 6, educators and law enforcement sound off on arming teachers in the classroom.
And you're watching Educate Oklahoma, an hour-long special presentation as we jump into this topic that is so important to so many of you. And we see your comments on our Facebook page. In fact, a couple of them, Katie saying that she's worried that lawmakers will just hold off teachers and then teachers will have to return to the classroom. Janine says maybe the pie needs to be a little bigger. Janine also says robbing Peter to pay Paul is not a solution. Bruce says it is long overdue, a back payment. Jenny saying this should not be historic.
Well, and one of the questions that we get probably the most, not only on Facebook, but just in any conversation is, what about the lottery? Wasn't that supposed to fund education? So let me just read. David Blatt with the Oklahoma Policy Institute says it was unrealistic to imagine that the lottery could pay for schools while we were cutting the revenue base right out from under them. By 2016, the state cut that made $121 million. The lottery's peak contribution was actually its first year in existence back, I believe, in 2006. It was $71 million. Last year, it was all the way down to $31.3 million. They say that's probably less than most people expected when it passed, but the lottery was never going to solve all of our education problems.
And that's actually come up here on our Facebook feed even during that first segment that we had. Back to your comments here, Dawn saying that legislators need to walk a mile in teachers' shoes. Jessica says, why does so much money have to go to sports? That money should be used in the classroom. Of course, a lot of boosters and stuff, too, that are done when you're in sports or if you're in band or any extracurricular. But a good point there Jessica makes. Elizabeth says they need to be fired for walking out. And that just goes to prove that not everybody is on board with what is unfolding today at the state capitol. Elizabeth is not alone. In fact, there was a lawmaker, Representative Bobby Cleveland, taking some heat here, a Republican out of Norman, for comments that he made. He said they were hired to teach. They should be in the classroom. Those comments made earlier today to Robin Marsh on News 9 during an interview there. So not everybody agreeing with what is happening at the state capitol today with some 20,000 folks, teachers, parents, even children out there protesting today.
One of the other questions has been who paid for the buses today, and the TCTA, the OEA, and a lot of businesses came in. Some even had the teachers themselves paying to ride the bus. So it was not part of the district's money to bus those teachers or faculty or anyone that wanted to go to the state capitol. So be
and
clear of that.
Heather, we see your comment. Don't put an expiration date on funding. Kelly saying she actually overheard a lawmaker today tell teachers to get back in the classroom.
We'll go back now to the special.
Well, the majority of Oklahoma voters say they do support the school shutdown. Our exclusive News on 6 poll says that voters are split when it comes to a state employee strike. Among the thousands of teachers rallying at the state capitol today, there were plenty of state workers who say they too feel neglected by the state legislature. Our Karl Torp talked with some state workers who say the proof is in the numbers.
Among the thousands of teachers here at the Capitol, there are state workers who say on average they're paid about 27% below market value. They are here making sure their message to lawmakers is also heard.
I don't feel like they care.
It may not be appropriate to ask what someone makes.
$2,100 is what our insurance is for medical alone.
But Kim Fissel doesn't mind doing the math. She works with the developmentally disabled in Tulsa, and today she is telling everyone what her take-home pay is each month.
After 11 years, I'm bringing home less now than I was 11 years ago.
That's due to a rise in health insurance and no real change in pay for 11 years, despite 2 promotions.
So that's all I've known is cuts.
The same story inside. Courtney Fox investigates cases of abuse for DHS, and in 3 years the workload has gotten bigger and her paycheck smaller.
You know, I cover 7 other counties, so you're spread thin. We're losing our workers that go out into the field, so that makes us have to do more investigations ourselves.
The roughly 22,000 state workers are asking for a $2,500 raise this year and $2,500 next year.
We have a little different environment that we have to work in. Our folks cannot walk off the job. Our correctional officers just can't up and leave and close the prison doors.
Instead, the Oklahoma Public Employees Association will be holding demonstrations throughout the state today and later this week. But they're also thinking long term.
And there's going to be elections in November. And state employees and educators are going to remember who supported them and who didn't.
On the scene, on the story at the Capitol, Karl Torp, News on 6.
And state workers say they need a more than $2,000 raise, so they will be holding demonstrations tomorrow in Norman and then in Wednesday in Tulsa.
Whether you call it a strike or a walkout, work stoppages are pretty rare in Oklahoma.
But regardless, history is repeating itself in the Sooner State.
2, 4, 6, 8, we want you to legislate.
It was 28 years ago in April of 1990. News on 6 was there as thousands of teachers marched on the Capitol demanding to be heard.
4 days in April 1990, indeed.
OEA Executive Director David Duvall remembers it well. He was there.
Welcome to day 4.
That's Duvall, then a picket captain for OEA. He had a front row seat to history and is now watching it repeat itself.
A lot of the conditions which existed then exist again today with respect to our poor funding.
Duvall says the biggest difference back in 1990 was there was one bill, House Bill 1017, that all parties had a hand in creating, but it needed emergency passage, a 2/3 majority, and it failed in the state Senate.
What we will not tolerate as professionals is failure to address the needs of children.
Kyle Dahlem was OEA's president back then. She resolved not to let a few votes keep them from crossing the finish line, and her resolve spread quickly. At OEA's urging and with school district support, teachers across the state prepared to picket.
We didn't know how many would close. We didn't know how many would show up. I remember that first day.
SOS! Save our schools!
On that Monday, standing on the steps of the Capitol and seeing vans and cars and buses pull up.
About 10,000 came out on day 1, and Duvall says instead of dwindling,
4th day we had 20,000 people, and the legislators at that point said, wait a minute.
Crowd celebrated when word spread that the Senate had passed the bill.
I think we can go back to school tomorrow.
I was on the steps of the Capitol. There were tears, there were cheers. It was remarkable.
Much of House Bill 1017 has been undone over the years, which has led to today's school shutdown.
Well, more and more Oklahoma teachers are packing up their classrooms and crossing the state line for better pay.
Teaching here, there's no way to reserve any money for emergencies.
Coming up, the new way other states are coming to Oklahoma to lure away our teachers. Plus, why one district says a short school week actually means teachers spend more one-on-one time with their students.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Leanne Taylor here in the newsroom at the Channel 6 studios here in downtown Tulsa. We are taking this 2-minute break between the segments of our education special to give you a chance on Facebook Live. Brian Dorman is just getting ready for a special portion of the program, so we'll be visiting with him in a moment. I just kind of wanted to recap the day for those of you who may be just now getting caught up. This morning, we had about 20,000 teachers and faculty, staff members, parents, students gathering on the state capitol in Oklahoma City. They started around 9 o'clock. We had about 250 teachers from Tulsa Public Schools gathered on those buses and drove down, but all the districts were represented in our area. Bixby, Broken Arrow, Union, all of those teachers making the trip down the turnpike to gather, some on the steps of the Capitol while others were trying to go inside and speak with lawmakers. On the agenda this morning, they had picketing. People are actually walking all around the Capitol, and you know how cold it was this morning, but they were out there with their signs, being respectful, thanking lawmakers, but asking them to do more. Then around 10:30, they started with special speakers. Alicia Priest, who is the president of the Oklahoma Education Association, spoke first. They also had Ed Allen, who is the president of the Oklahoma City Teachers Union, and he really fired up the audience in terms of talking about the State House, saying this is our house and we need to reach out to these lawmakers so that they will hear us and answer our cries. Hope Davis, a 10th grader from Moore High School, was also there, and she talked about having moved from Texas to be a part of Oklahoma's, moving here with her family and being a part of the education system in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, she said that she's really struggled because of inadequacy in the amount of teachers, certified teachers that could teach those AP classes, poor textbooks, old textbooks, outdated textbooks, furniture that was falling apart. She said she didn't realize how good she had it in Texas, especially having coming to Oklahoma. We would invite you to make comments on our Facebook page. We'll get to those answers here. Several people have said they feel that we should audit the state government and take a look at where all the money is going. That has been a cry for many people over the years. What would happen if our civil service went on strike? They aren't paid nearly enough either. So both sides of this issue.
Budget cuts are forcing schools to pick and choose what programs they can keep and which have to be cut to save money.
News on 6's Brian Dorman looks at the impact the lack of funding is having on educators and their students.
I found the funding issue is far-reaching, impacting both large and small districts alike.
When I first got here, we actually had French, German, Latin, and Spanish, and all of them have been cut but Spanish.
Julie Leeton is in her 11th year teaching Spanish at Sapulpa Junior High School.
We're in a pretty low place right now.
You get emotional talking about it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, tell me why.
Because these are my babies. I want them to be successful. I want every one of my kids to be the best that they can be, and to know that I can't give them the best that I know that they can deserve. It's very disheartening. It's very upsetting.
Things are continuing to get worse for Jenks Public Schools too, where class sizes are growing out of control.
I teach pre-algebra. I have 36 kids in my pre-algebra class, and the teacher down the hall from me has 39. And we're sitting right on top of each other in the classroom.
Elle Fowler teaches 6th grade math and science at Jenks West Intermediate School. Elle says a number of things have been cut, including summer school.
We had to cut our summer school program that we used to have at this site, which was nice because it was a way for a lot of teachers to earn some additional income over the summer.
Michelle Sumner is in her 18th year as principal and 33rd year as an educator.
I was a teacher back in 1990 when teachers walked out then. And, you know, the message then was fund education. And here we are 20 years, almost 20 years later, and we're still asking to fund education.
Michelle says she is having teachers with decades of experience leave or move to Texas because they simply cannot afford to teach anymore. And on the other end, she can't find qualified teachers to fill the gap.
I go to job fairs all the time, and I'm standing there waiting for people to come to my booth And we're Jinx, and typically Jinx has a large recruitment force. And the booth next to me in Texas is getting a lot of business, but not the booths from Oklahoma.
And Michelle tells me that she hopes up until recently the students were unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. She says she did all that she could to make sure the lack of funding didn't impact the quality of education. Brian Dorman, News on 6.
That lack of funding has pushed many Oklahoma school districts to a 4-day week. But some districts have found there are other benefits. Locust Grove schools switched to a 4-day week 3 years ago, and they didn't do it for the money.
What is our answer? 23.
Elisa Cox has been a first grade teacher in Locust Grove for 10 years, but it's the last 3 she's enjoyed most, not because of money, but because of time.
We're able to read more, we're able to do the math more.
Students in Locust Grove go to school 4 days a week from 8 to 3:45.
What does EA say?
Having Mondays off gives teachers more time for planning, and the longer school days allow kids to be pulled out for small group instruction, polishing their skills in math and reading.
They're moving forward wherever they're at. You know, if we need more skills, we're working on that. If they're ready for 2nd grade, we're moving forward.
Just in one school year, we saw a 10-point percentage growth in one grade in math.
Superintendent Lori Helton says Locust Grove is also saving money, particularly on transportation costs. Money that's being used for things like computers, new curriculum, even teacher bonuses.
It's been a long time in Locust Grove since those things were able to be purchased.
The approach has become so popular that this year 1 in 5 Oklahoma school children is in a district with a 4-day week.
We should not encourage this.
State School Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister worries about the long-term impact of 4-day school weeks. She says Oklahoma already has one of the shortest school years in the country, and the 4-day week makes the disparity even worse.
We are losing valuable time to sustain momentum and grow. Just extending more minutes to the day is not actually the same as having more days in the calendar year.
So once teachers get in this building, they don't leave?
Not usually.
But in Locust Grove, administrators were also fighting another trend, lack of teachers. More money and higher test scores are the perks of a system designed to recruit teachers. And they say right from the beginning, it worked.
The very next day, we had 15 resumes walk in the door unsolicited.
Can you imagine going back to a 5-day week?
It would be hard.
All the problems that have led to this are really problems created by the legislature and adults, not kids.
Up next, the new funding shortfall solution that'll mean even larger class sizes, made up of kids on different grade levels.
Plus, find out which district already knows it's going to need 300 new teachers next school year.
And you're watching our special presentation, Educate Oklahoma, an hour-long presentation here in prime time tonight.
Yeah, and we're taking your questions on Facebook or your comments. I'm just going to read a few of them. I think there's an interesting vibe that goes on when people are talking, because it is a very highly charged emotional issue, especially when we're talking about our children, when we're talking about our future, we're talking about getting jobs and business to our state.
Money.
So
that's a big part of
it too. Right, taxation, all of that becomes, but anyway, Lisa says this is the only way the voices can be heard. I think that's really important to consider. Bruce says peaceful demonstration is not wrong. Sometimes it's the only way for a voice to be heard. Jennifer says we have tried 10 years to get them to do their job. This is democracy. We are now taking action. So I think those are really valid points along there, those lines.
It's a road we've been down before. I thought it was really interesting to see Craig Day's piece, taking us back to 1990. Michelle Sumner mentioned 1990. It is something that we have in the past tried to fix. I thought it was interesting to the numbers. They talked on the first day having 10,000. I think a lot of people were concerned, what does tomorrow bring? If we had 20,000 out there today, tomorrow will it be 10? Will it be 5? It was interesting to see in 1990, the first day was 10, the second day was 20.
It was even more.
So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds here later this week and to see, does history kind of repeat itself a little bit?
Now, there are a number of schools that have already canceled classes for tomorrow. We have those rolling at the bottom of the screen. We have them on our website and on our app as well. Also, some districts have actually canceled all the way through the end of the week.
Yeah, a couple of those Owasso public schools closed for the rest of the week or until further notice. I put a little asterisk next to that because I just talked with the superintendent of Owasso schools on Friday rather, and he told me we are prepared to be closed for up to 10 days. If lawmakers are able to strike a deal sooner than that they can agree to, they'll go back to school tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they are in limbo as well. Jay Public Schools closed until further notice as well.
And Manford is also out until April 6th for sure.
So the rest of the week as well.
Yeah, so those lists will continue to update, and a lot of schools are having to go day by day. I know
the tomorrow list is long already.
Finding out though, it can't be like the superintendent says, hey, this is what we're going to do. It has to be the teachers that make that call. So that's kind of what they have to wait on a day by day basis.
Yeah, and again, you can get all this in the News on 6 app. We'll continue scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Our Educate Oklahoma special presentation continues right now.
The State School Board Association says there were more than 500 teaching vacancies at the start of the year, despite record numbers of emergency certified teachers.
News on 6's Ashley Isbicki breaks down our state's teacher shortage problem.
School leaders say the problem is not finding just a couple of quality teachers, it's finding hundreds of them.
We have more than 24 middle and high school positions posted right now.
Positions Edmond Public Schools is struggling to fill.
We don't have the pool of candidates waiting in the wings to become that next great teacher.
District leaders say in years past they would see 400 teaching candidates at this annual job fair. This year, not even half showed up.
Our principals would tell you that there were times when they would have 50 to 75 applicants for a job. Now, when I get their recommendations, sometimes it's 5 to 7 at best.
Like in Edmond, Tulsa Public Schools was forced to use emergency certified teachers in the classroom just to fill the gap.
5 or 6 years ago, we had 25 to 30 emergency certificates a year. This year, now we're approaching 2,000 emergency certified teachers in our classrooms.
A survey conducted by 300 Oklahoma districts showed 536 teaching vacancies as of August 1st. And another 480 positions that were eliminated.
Class sizes continue to grow. When you can't find a teacher, then you combine classes, and the existing teacher then has more difficult working conditions.
The survey, conducted by the Oklahoma State School Boards Association, says the #1 factor contributing to the teacher shortage in Oklahoma is teacher compensation.
For all job markets, you want a competitive compensation package, and Oklahoma is dead last in our region.
The quality of candidates is very good. The quantity is what is lacking right now because some of those quality candidates are choosing to go out of state.
Leaving concerns for the students left behind.
We all want a high quality teacher in the classroom.
The latest numbers show only a small percentage have any prior teaching experience. The Department of Education says August is typically when it sees the most emergency certification requests. Live on the scene on the story in Tulsa, Ashley Isbicki, News on 6.
A former education official says Oklahoma is training great teachers for other states.
News on 6's Tess Monty found young teachers are getting their education here, but then they're leaving over low pay.
Right now, I have to have 2 part-time jobs just to get enough to do my daily life.
Amanda Satlow is in her 3rd year of teaching. We ran into her at a job fair in Oklahoma, hosted by the Dallas Independent School District.
Teaching here, there's no way to reserve any money for emergencies.
Before Oklahoma's recent pay raise, the state minimum salary for a teacher just starting out was $31,600. But in Dallas,
we start out at $51,000 a year, which is about average in Texas, but you can make up to $60,000 within the first 3 to 4 years.
Being in an environment where your classroom supplies aren't coming out of your own pocket, you're not having to dip into your savings to fund your classroom. Cops don't have to buy their guns and their bullets.
So how does Oklahoma compete? Now a starting teacher will make about $39,000. If you look at Fort Smith, Arkansas, a teacher there starts at $37,000. And up in Wichita, Kansas, starting pay is $40,700. The OEA wants a $10,000 raise for teachers. That still won't match what teachers make in Texas, but it would make Oklahoma more competitive nationwide.
I think if teachers saw that the legislature and the community cared enough to give them that kind of a raise, I think the results would really be positive.
Karl Springer is a retired Oklahoma City superintendent who now lives in Dallas, where he volunteers.
What's happened is over the last 15 years, revenue for education's been going down. And so the attitude has been, you know, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to reduce the taxes and we're going to have prosperity and then we'll have more revenue. And that has not been the case.
He says until that changes, out-of-state school districts will find success in holding career fairs in Oklahoma. And teachers like Amanda Satlow will be looking to leave. Tess Monty, News on 6.
While a lot of teachers are moving to Texas for a bigger paycheck, the higher cost of living will still take a chunk of that extra money.
State lawmakers have taken a step, and some would say a big step, toward addressing the chronic underfunding of Oklahoma's public schools.
But even with the tax package approved last week, our Alex Cameron tells us Oklahoma has a long road out of the funding basement.
We are operating on relatively the same dollars as 2008, but with 50,000 more students.
Take a look. Student enrollment in 2007-2008 was 641,000. This year, 695,000, 54,000 more. Meanwhile, state aid funding's gone from $2.05 billion 10 years ago to $1.87 billion this year, $180 million less.
It's a pretty dismal situation.
Oklahoma Policy Institute's David Blatt says most states cut education funding when the recession hit in the late 2000s. But as this graphic shows, many bounced back and have surpassed their 2008 funding levels, while Oklahoma still remains well below it.
Oklahoma has cut state aid funding by twice as much as any other state over the last decade.
Oklahoma is last in the region in per pupil spending, last in the nation in teacher pay. So how did we get here? Does the state simply not have enough funds? Blatt says no, it's because of leadership's priorities.
Even when oil prices were $110 a barrel, we still weren't being able to give teachers a raise because the priority in those years were tax cuts and tax breaks.
Many believe the state's current teacher crisis can be traced directly to those choices. Hoping to turn the tide, Superintendent Hoffmeister chose to submit a $2.9 billion budget request for next year, a 20% increase over this year. Some say the request's unrealistic. Hoffmeister says it's unrealistic to think the current funding level isn't causing irreparable damage.
We are harming our future. Every day we kick the can or say we can't. It is time for the legislature to find a way.
Alex Cameron, News on 6.
A new funding source for education could be State Question 788, which would legalize medical marijuana. It's on the ballot in June, and if it passes, 75% of the sales tax surplus would go into the general fund to be used for education. But there's no way to know if there will actually be a surplus because the tax is used first to cover the cost of the program.
Many Oklahomans continue to ask about the lottery. Wasn't it supposed to solve the education funding problem? The law stated 35% of annual lottery proceeds would go to education for the first 12 years. That's about $190 million a year in gross receipts, allocating about $66 million to education. But the money had to be split up between Common Ed, Higher Ed, and Career Tech, with Common Ed taking the largest chunk. That means through the last fiscal year, K through 12 schools got about $30 million each year from the lottery. But considering the Common Ed budget is more than $2 billion, the lottery money comprises less than 2%.
State funding problems have forced some districts to put elementary students from 2 different grades into 1 classroom. Oklahoma City Public Schools currently have 18 split classrooms, and the district is looking into tripling that number next year.
I don't think it's appropriate to put kids in a classroom that's a multi-grade classroom where the teacher is ill-prepared and has not been trained, and there's not a process to make that successful.
Board members like Mark Mann and many parents tell us they hope money will be moved around to avoid split classrooms as a solution.
Did you know there are 512 school districts across the Sooner State, making up nearly 1,800? Money-saving ideas floated around year after year is school consolidation. But rural lawmakers often block legislation, saying the savings would be minimal compared to the irreparable harm to their communities from schools being closed. 5 consolidation-related bills were introduced at the start of this session. All are now dead. Governor Fallin did issue an executive order last fall mandating administrative consolidation. The State Board of Education must provide a list of school districts that spend less than 60% of budgets on instruction by September 1st. We'll keep an eye on it.
The school shutdown is impacting thousands of people across our state, and you can help us tell their stories. Still ahead, a community project delivering raw, unfiltered news. Plus, why some charter schools are still open, and the big reason more families are opting for virtual learning.
All right, welcome back. Leanne Taylor along with Brian Dorman, and we are on Facebook Live for those of you who are accessing us this way. I love this technology. It gives you a chance to respond to things that you're seeing during our 1 hour long education special, ask questions, comments, thoughts, and they run the gamut, don't they?
Yeah, it's a great conversation that we're having, and it's amazing just technology allowing us to be able to have this conversation, you know, to be able to have an hour special presentation in the middle of prime time on something so important, and then be able to have this backstory happening as well with the conversation that's happening on social media. It really is incredible. Lots of you making comments. Let's jump right into them. Samantha saying, my kid's school can't even afford a school nurse. The secretary gives out meds to the kids. We're going to talk more on that in a moment. Shannon says, what about the support staff? We make nothing and we work our tails off. Leanne says, thank you teachers for standing up for our kids. Lisa just posted, I have watched some of my former teachers move to other states because of the pay.
A couple of comments here. Paul Weaver says, my daughter is a second-year teacher and she has had on her own through donations secured more than $5,000 to fund her classroom. It's such a shame that teachers have to beg for classroom needs. And I know many teachers who spend their own money for supplies. And of course, their kiddos become part of their lives in a very real way. So the issues that those kids are facing at home, those teachers take home with them, and they help provide food or clothing or whatever their needs might be. And it's heartbreaking when a teacher can't do that and be able to supply for her own family. As we saw in that earlier report, having 2 and 3 extra jobs, and by the time you get home, you can't even spend time with your own kids.
And you look at the salary point of what teachers make, and I've never met a teacher that doesn't buy things and supplies and treats and things for their kids. And you know, even when I was at Jinx, they said they were having to, at this point, count out sheets of paper to teachers, and you're only allowed so much paper. Yeah. I mean, you know that we have a real big problem when we have that. And then when you ask teachers are like, you know what, it's really not about us, it's not about our pay. We just want more funding for school. You know, and teachers, you know, everybody's rallying around them saying they deserve more money, and they do. But the teachers will be the first to say, it's not about me, it's really about funding, it's about education, it's about getting those class sizes down, it's about being able to offer the extracurriculars, and about even just having books and supplies and things for the classroom.
We've had several people on Facebook comment about taxing more of the oil and gas industry, and we heard David Blatt say a little bit about that in that previous story. So there are a lot of options and alternatives out there. We're just going to have to see if the lawmakers can help us out.
All right, our Educate at Oklahoma special continues now.
Higher teacher pay is one of the reasons that Epic Charter School says they have thousands more people applying for jobs than they actually have open positions for teachers. News on 6's Dave Davis looks at why more families are choosing virtual learning.
X squared is less than 4.
Cassandra Christian and Clayton Williams used to attend a brick and mortar school, but now their family is choosing blended virtual learning through Epic Charter.
In the middle of my 7th grade year, whenever I was still in public school, and we pulled out almost immediately due to heavy bullying.
I felt like a failure. As a parent, I couldn't meet his needs.
Their mother, Trish, supervises them. They all take online courses, and they have a teacher, Miss Lake, who's a phone call or text away. When it comes to teacher salaries, Epic pays their virtual teachers a base pay with bonuses. That together averages about $63,000 a year.
Merit pay is what you're referring to, is resonating throughout the state of Oklahoma. Currently, we have over 5,000 Oklahoma certified teachers that have applied.
Union Public School Superintendent Dr. Kurt Hartzler believes a reason virtual charters can pay teachers more is that they don't have to spend their state aid on high operating costs.
We're responsible for transporting students. We're responsible for feeding them. We're responsible for providing the adequate supervision and the security that's needed. We have buildings that we have to heat and cool.
So why do virtual charter schools? Well, that's what this study asked hundreds of Oklahoma families. And the #1 reason Bullying.
The study, commissioned by the Oklahoma statewide virtual charter school board, cited overcrowding, limited resources, and problems with staff as other top reasons for switching. And more families are choosing virtual charters. Since 2014, statistics show enrollment has more than doubled. Epic believes they'll top 40,000 students within 5 years. Union already has their own virtual academy, so it's clear virtual is not just a trend.
It's not going to go away. I think if you think about our students, they're the digital natives.
I feel super successful only because my kids are now successful.
And I was able to find a new social group, a new group of people that accepted me for me.
Dave Davis, News on 6.
As a parent, it's so sad. I mean, it's just really hard. Our kids' education is one of the most important things.
About a week and a half ago, some Oklahoma parents came to the Capitol and gathered for what they called School Choice Day. Charter and private school teachers did not participate, of course, in today's walkout because they are paid differently than public school teachers. And the teachers who were here today, if they were hoping lawmakers would take some kind of action because of the rally, well, they left here sorely disappointed. But one lawmaker told me it's just not feasible because in reality, passing any kind of legislation simply takes time under the state constitution.
Lori, you were there throughout the day today during the walkout of the protest there at the state capitol. Just sort of describe the general feel of teachers and any idea how long this thing could last. I know there are many, many dozens of school districts in our area that are already canceling classes for tomorrow and some for the entire week.
Well, I can tell you the mood here this morning was very jubilant, very high energy, thousands and thousands of people outside, music blaring from the speakers getting up and pounding the pulpit, if you will. A huge line to get into the side to the state capitol. It took us quite a while to sneak our way into the capitol, and of course, it was packed inside. So many people trying to knock on doors, talking to people. Some legislators came out and talked. Some wouldn't even meet with the teachers and the parents. Some got into a bit of a shouting match with them. We heard that one even said, you know, get a different type of job if you're not happy. So it was a very high energy place. After all the speakers, then they rallied and marched around the Capitol with their signs, chanting at times, laughing and cheering, people going by, honking their horns in support. So it was a very high energy day here today. Lawmakers really, though, didn't give them any specifics. They were like, we're trying, we're doing our best. We don't really have an idea of when we can find more money. One legislator said, look, if we could stop giving subsidies to the wind energy, we'd have more money for education. He was like, when you don't have money, you should stop giving it away. When you dig yourself into a hole, you should quit digging. But again, no promises or no guarantees. And I think the same thing is we don't really know how long this is going to last. I mean, OEA is saying they're going to keep going until education is properly funded. What does that mean and how long that takes? I think that's anybody's guess right now.
All right, Lori Fulbright in Oklahoma City. Thank you.
Interesting points of discussion for sure.
Yes.
Arming teachers in the classroom. The debate is happening across the country, including right here in Oklahoma.
If something were to ever happen and I didn't try to defend my kids, I couldn't live with that.
Up next, students and teachers weigh in on the best ways to keep kids safe at school.
Plus, the surprising number of weapons found inside Oklahoma schools.
And the conversation continues right now on Facebook. We are seeing all of your comments. We encourage you, still, it's not too late to jump on. Tell us how you're feeling, your reaction to what you're seeing here in our hour-long special Educate Oklahoma. Jason quickly jumped on there as Lori was speaking, saying they pass bills within hours when they want to. In regards to the time frame, the timeline on how long this can take. You know, many of us would have said this time last week, well, gosh, how are we going to get this together? And well, they did, didn't they, by the end of last week?
Not only did they get it together, but both sides of the aisle agreed, and it got to the governor's desk for a signature. However, as we've heard from the OEA president, Alicia Priest, what they have done is great. It's historic. It's amazing, but it's not enough, and it's not what Tulsa that teachers are needing, wanting, and asking for. Several different people have commented on here. Jenny says, you know, if it was not for donors choose.org, which is, I guess, an organization that you can go on and help buy supplies for the teachers. She said she wouldn't be able to have the things she needed for her classroom. Mackenzie says, I'm a student, and it's sad that we can't read out of new textbooks. I know this morning one of the students was saying that the works that she's looking at are from 2006, and here we are at 2018. Upgrade and update and the new information that needs to be given to these students.
Yeah, lots of you talking too about the lack of school nurses in your children's school, also the lack of school counselors, which was, Sepulpa told me one of the first things that they had to cut down was how many they had for counseling, which I thought was really surprising and very concerning in the times that we're living in today to see that.
Well, with bullying and problems at home, and those are things that the school counselor can address. There are, I mean, you know, a lot of folks are just a paycheck away from being in dire straits, and so that is an avenue. The school becomes that point of where they can go and get help. And I want to mention, because I know there are a lot of schools that are already out for tomorrow, and it does put a burden on the working parents out there. On our website at newson6.com, in the upper banner, you'll see there is lots of information that will help find childcare, that will find meals for your family if you're struggling right now. Also, I saw you can call 211 and find out some of those areas that will be available for getting your family taken care of during this walkout as we move day to day and possibly indefinitely.
And we talk a lot about the free News on 6 app. If you don't have it, really now is the time, especially if you're a parent. Lots of resources there. Our special programming.
Well, schools aren't just teaching kids, they're looking for ways to keep them safe.
In our exclusive News on 6 poll, 63% of people say students are safer when school staff is armed. 27% think kids are less safe. Well, Oklahoma actually began arming teachers 3 years ago.
And as News on 6's Rich Lenz found out, the real debate now is how easy it should be to give a teacher a gun.
No one can come or go as the school remains on lockdown.
Out of the blue on the intercom, they just say lockdown procedures. I have this thing I do where I go, let's go.
A snap back to the devastating new reality of Drew Rhodes' dream job, teaching, while dealing with the increasing threat of school shooting.
The last thing I want is to be caught with my guard down.
The government teacher stood ready to confront a potential shooter, putting himself between the students and the door of his classroom during a recent lockdown at U.S. Grant High School in Oklahoma City.
Normally, I just have a chair, but I just so happened to have a desk that broke and there was a middle pipe, so I said, I might as well fill my hands up.
Rhodes did not have to defend anyone that day. Officers made an arrest, confiscating the gun before any harm could be done. But it's incidents like this one that are putting the focus on arming teachers. Oklahoma schools have allowed teachers to carry guns since 2015. Now, the State Department of Education does not track those schools, but we surveyed the districts and found that 21 of them have adopted gun policies.
Honestly, I didn't know whether it would fly or not. I mean, I really figured that there would be mixed emotions.
Todd Hallman was among the first in the state to get trained and certified to carry a weapon at school.
I'm here to teach the kids, and I'm here to protect them.
That concept, though, is not so clear-cut for everybody.
We don't try to encourage the schools one way or the other.
Homeland Security Director Kim Carter says some districts have admittedly overlooked policy and procedure for how to handle guns in the classroom.
What type of equipment would you allow them to carry? Are you going to require them to carry the gun on their body? You're going to let them lock it in their desk drawers?
The director also says that training is of highest importance. However, Representative Jeff Cootie recently proposed legislation to reduce the state's training requirements.
I think in a worst case scenario, protection on the side of the good guys is much preferable to nothing.
He said the proposal is aimed at giving districts more control, but the bill did not pass, to the relief of some teachers like Drew Rhodes.
If you want to arm teachers, arm us with the funding we need to help these kids, because at the end of the day, the most powerful weapon ever known is education.
Rich Lenz, News on 6.
The State Department of Education says 95 firearms incidents have happened at Oklahoma schools over the last 3 years. 2 of them resulted in someone hurt. 6 involved an elementary school student, while 15 involved kids in middle school. In more than 2/3 of the incidents, the student was suspended for the remainder of the school year.
News on 6 strives to report on topics that are important to your community, and we want you to be part of the news gathering process.
Right after the break, we're going to tell you about a new community project and how you can get involved.
And welcome back to Facebook Live. I'm Leanne Taylor along with Brian Dorman. I usually am on the morning side and you are in the evening side.
It is so great to see you.
It's great to be with you. And I think we both really value what Facebook offers. It gives us an opportunity to connect with you and to have an opportunity to hear your thoughts and questions and hopefully respond and give you some insight maybe into what other people are thinking about that. So it just seemed natural for us to get to do this. So we thank you for tuning in and being able to watch our special on the air and then being a part of Facebook Live. Real quick, I want just a couple of things. Barbara says, I've taught 40 plus years and have had to work 2 jobs for the past 18. I topped out many years ago as a teacher. Pay stops after about 25. Last fall, because of a rise in insurance and property tax with no raise in pay, I had to sell my house. I could no longer afford to keep it. Even so, I still buy supplies and other things for my students and continue to work 2 jobs. I think that's what we've heard time and time again about how teachers are in this to be a part of a child's life, to change lives, not for the money.
Your mother, a teacher, her whole career?
Yeah, well, actually 40 years here. They moved to Colorado and she taught another.
Oh my gosh.
It was a total of 50 years total.
Yeah, my stepsister, a teacher too, teaches back in Michigan. So, I mean, it's something that we know well.
Right.
We have family members who do it. We know, I mean, we haven't even discussed just how hard of a job it is. It is not.
I saw one of the signs that said, I deal with 125 hormonal teenagers every day. Nothing scares me. I like that sign. I thought that was really apropos.
Personally, you could not pay me enough.
Yeah,
it is such a hard and thankless job, really, when you think of what they do, what they deal with. And, you know, even since we've been in classrooms, more of what they're dealing with. I mean, when we were in classrooms, you didn't have all of the social media, the cell phones, all of that Facebook and all the apps and things that just really, it is hard to be a child. It's hard to be a teenager, and I imagine that makes it harder to even be a teacher these days as well.
Absolutely.
Paul jumps on here, says raises and funding are both needed. Amber posting just a minute ago, they gave them the needed funding, or at least a portion, and then yanked it, referring, of course, to lawmakers. The teachers got their raises. This is now all about funding. And that is a big part of the conversation. Part of it is teacher raises. The other part of it is, of course, school funding in general.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor Facebook Live. We invite you to continue to make your comments, and we will stay on until a little bit after the program as well. And so right now we'll head back to the special of the Educate Oklahoma.
News on 6 viewers saw unprecedented coverage of today's teacher walkout.
And we can tell more stories through a new community journalism project, Unfiltered. We've teamed up with Mike Betcher, who worked with us at Griffin Communications before becoming a network war correspondent and OU journalism professor. His student journalists will help Oklahomans take part in their own stories.
One of the issues is people aren't involved in the process. And I think people want transparency, and they want to be involved in the news gathering process and help us in our journey.
The behind the scenes stuff won't seem like as much of an agenda, hopefully. They'll be able to really identify with how we take them along the journey, and we want their input and we want their trust in helping us to complete that journey to finding that story and telling that story.
It's going to be exciting, and you can see our unfiltered content on the News on 6 Facebook page as well as our app. And that is all the time we have for now.
If you'd like to see more information on a story you saw tonight, check out the News on 6 app for more Educate Oklahoma coverage. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you back here at 10.
Educate Oklahoma has been presented by Classic Chevrolet of Owasso.
Well, today was a very big day. We have talked about it for weeks, and here it came. The walkout did in fact happen, and many of those teachers making their way to Oklahoma City. Now day 2 begins tomorrow, so we will see how that will unfold.
Yeah, quite a showing today. 20,000 folks, teachers, students, parents, 1,000 state employees, all converging on the state capitol today to really make sure that their voice as tiny as that voice may have been and as grown as that voice may have been were heard today. It didn't seem to matter, did it, the size of the district?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to remind you, though, we'll continue to update those school closings. Some are simply closing tomorrow, others are closing the rest of the week. So you'll want to check our News on 6 website. Also, our app has that loaded there. Also, check with your particular district, because I know that a lot of the schools are providing food for the children if they are normally on that kind of program for breakfast or lunch. Also for child care, those are available. We have that information listed. There are so many faith-based organizations, community organizations that recognize the need. They understand the importance of making sure that in this interim time that those kids are taken care of, that there's not this disruption. Luckily, they have snow days built in the schedule that didn't get used.
We didn't have much snow at all this season.
So fingers crossed we can make it through this week and maybe a few more days next week if necessary. But as Lori mentioned earlier in the broadcast, you know, when this will all wrap up is really anyone's guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, we all want to know what tomorrow is going to bring, and really that's all we know is tomorrow. We don't know really Wednesday, Thursday, Friday what this looks like. Only a couple of districts, Owasso, Jay, Manford, and Owasso, announcing that they are out for at least the rest of the week. It really is a day-by-day basis for a lot of districts, and so that means day-by-day for daycare, it means day-by-day for school, it means day-by-day for activities, and we talk about things like testing, school testing coming up, graduation, all those things in limbo. So
it's a very big ending to the school year, but now is the time that teachers feel that with a legislature in session that they can make a difference. We thank you for sharing your time with us. Brian and Ashley will be on at 9 here on the Tulsa CW. Enjoy Craig and Terry at 10, and then Rich and
you're
I.
going to be back tomorrow morning bright and early, aren't you?
I'm thinking I may just pull up a chair and
yeah, stay with us a while.
If I'm wearing this tomorrow, you guys will know that could be the issue. Thank you, though, for sharing your time with us, and we'll continue to cover this story right here on Facebook Live, all our social platforms, as well as on air.
Yeah, we certainly encourage you to continue the conversation, because this one we'll certainly be having for, it looks like, quite a while. So thank you and have a great night.